Hello, my name is Eugenia and I am the founder of Unlox'U, the eating psychology clinic, where we give you a mind plan instead of a diet plan to rewire your relationship with food. How to stop craving carbohydrates and sugar? That's a question that I get asked quite frequently, and it can be really, really hard to always think about food, to always want food, and really, I guess it gets to a point where it takes up so much of your daily mental capacity that you can't really focus on anything else. So it's really important, and a lot of people really desire also to think less about food, to worry less about food, to eat when you're hungry, to stop when you're full, not to use food, carbohydrates, or sugar as an emotional crutch. So let's look into that. Let's look into what is really causing those cravings and then what you can do. What is causing sugar and carbohydrate cravings? In fact, there are so many potential reasons. However, I combine it into one workbook and I talk about 13 elements, 13 underlying triggers that might be leading or driving your cravings for sugary food and processed carbohydrates. And we can divide them, or I divide them into three groups. One is the biological reasons, psychological reasons, and physiological reasons. So let me just briefly go into that and really show you that it has really nothing to do with willpower or being disciplined, and it's not just stop eating and that's it. It's not black and white. Food is never black and white. It's actually, there are so many elements to what we choose to eat, what we desire to eat, what we even crave. So the physiological reasons for why we might be craving food, particularly sugar and carbohydrates. Physiological is, for example, when we experience blood sugar fluctuation, when our gut flora is not healthy, when our gut has overgrowth of candida overgrowth or yeast, or we have too many of the, let's say, not so good, such good bacteria in our gut, because the bacteria in our gut changes what we crave. It really has a strong impact on what food we want to eat more of. Also, food that we eat changes our gut bacteria. So one feeds the other. Blood sugar fluctuation. Someone who eats a lot of processed carbohydrates and then also, let's say, sugar food, that will always spike your blood sugar. So if you tend to have a diet that has more carbohydrates, and particularly simple carbohydrates, when the food is not balanced, you will be going through blood sugar fluctuation spikes, and then every time there is a drop, your body will be sending a signal to want to eat more. It will not be sending you a signal to go and eat tomatoes or cucumbers. It will be sending you a signal to eat more simple carbohydrates, because that is what spikes your blood sugar faster, in particular sugar. So you will be craving something sweet, because that's what spikes the blood sugar much, much faster than anything else. Then we have the biological triggers. Biological triggers are things like when someone is not eating enough calories throughout the day, or they are skipping meals. The body will be going into, I guess, that starvation mode, or will have that feeling, I'm not getting enough to survive. And what happens when we are, whether it's actually in real life or if it's only let's say your body is anticipating scarcity. So it knows I'm going to go on a diet, New Year's is coming, and I will then start eating while I will go on a diet. You might even find that you start eating more, you start want more food. So there is a real scarcity, and there is also perceived scarcity or anticipated scarcity. So food will not be available. Psychologically what happens is you want more as well. So, but these are the psychological. The biological is if you're really actually skipping meals, you're not eating enough calories. So what I see with clients, for example, they would skip breakfast and try to eat later in the day. But what happens is then at nighttime, in the evening, they start eating more and more. They start craving food. They're not craving salads or cucumbers or spinach. It's usually high calorie dense foods because the body is trying to catch up and get the calories that it missed out on. Our bodies are really, really good at surviving. In fact, our brain's mission, the main mission is to survive, to find mechanisms and strategies to survive. That's why when we're not eating enough calories, it will start noticing food that's available. It will start smelling food everywhere because it sends that signal to the front of your lobe, that frontal lobe, that this is important. So everything that's at the frontal lobe is basically sending the signal to the brain. This is our first priority. This is what we need to look out for. So that's why we start thinking then about food all the time, and you can't stop thinking about it. You start seeing food everywhere. You start smelling. You start hearing people talking about food. That is because your brain is thinking you really need this. We need to find an opportunity to eat. And also, when let's say you are not eating enough and you are now going to a function, let's say a Christmas function, or it's summer, so maybe you are invited to a lot of barbecues. When food is available in abundance, now your brain thinks, okay, I don't know when I'm going to have food again. Let me eat now as much as I can, as fast as possible. That's where you start finding yourself almost like binge eating or wanting to eat all the food and feel really bad and guilty and way overfull afterwards. And how to not to get into that cycle is not to trigger those biological triggers. So not to trigger the need to find every opportunity there is to get food and also to get as much food as possible. And then there are also the psychological triggers. Psychological triggers are things like it's an emotional crutch. It's a coping mechanism. So every time when you are really overwhelmed or sad or there are things that are happening, if it's out of your control, you know what you can control. You know you can go and eat food and it will make you feel better for that moment. That's the coping mechanism. Then it's emotional crutch, so find comfort in food, withdrawing from everything else and just eating. Some people describe they just close the curtains and they create this own world with food. It's also habits, so things that you've been doing for many years, eating at certain times of the day. Also, when you drive past certain petrol station, you always stop there and you always get that specific chocolate there, or every time you drive past certain cafe on your way to work, you always stop there, or it's every morning 10 a.m. morning tea, you go to the same cafe and always get the same slice or certain coffee. These are habits. These are things that are part of our routine in our day, and that's something we do quite often also mindlessly, because that's just what we do. Our brain is really wired for survival. That means also doing things that don't require as much energy, which means creating as many habits as possible where we don't need to think about them, so we do them mindlessly, automatically. because that requires less amount of energy, the least amount of energy. Habits, like I said, patterns, routines, these are all the psychological triggers for why we might be craving food. And like I said, in particular, carbohydrates, simple processed carbohydrates and sugars. So the question is, what can we do? What is it that we can do? Well, what can we do? I suggest to all of my clients who join our programs, we start with rewiring your appetite. Rewiring your appetite. That means we change what you crave by taming your appetite. Taming your appetite and also change what you crave. We do that through a program, and we focus on balancing the blood sugar, changing gut bacteria, and eating at the right amount of calories at the right time. So you're not triggering that biological trigger to just eat as much as you can. To trigger, I guess, to seek out every opportunity and then binge on food. So it's really important. What do we do? Balancing the blood sugar, eating balanced meals, eating regularly. So we really suggest 3 main meals and appropriate amount of snacks. Also, in terms of carbohydrates, what do we suggest? Having an appropriate carbohydrate diet. We are reducing the amount of carbohydrates you have, but only to appropriate amount. So we are not triggering cravings, but also by changing to wholesome food, the right amount of calories and a specific amount regular meals, what we're doing is we are then switching off that trigger to binge, to eat every time food is available. So we are calming your nervous system. When it comes to food, we're calming your appetite, we're calming your brain, because your brain knows, okay, food is available. I know that food will be available. I don't need to eat. I don't need to constantly think about food. I don't need to worry about food. I know it's coming. So creating more capacity in your brain to think about other things, to think about, to be able to be present with your family, to be able to be present with your children, playing with your children, spend time with family and social situations, and not thinking about your body or food, but rather have fun, smile, enjoy that time that you have, maybe even with your partner. So being able to be fully present in your life and focus on your projects, on career, on creating something that's really meaningful to you. So that's what we're doing with the program, Rewired to Eat. It's a program that I have designed to really change all of that I've just said as well. And also what we're doing is we're switching off. We are basically connecting to that switch off system in your brain that you have. You were born with it, but as you've changed your eating, maybe you've been on a diet and then experimenting with certain diets and maybe eating to like craving food. If you're craving carbohydrates and sugar all the time, that means that switch off is not functioning in your brain. So we are switching on that switch off in your brain. It gives you that signal of I'm satisfied. I don't need food anymore. So your body is then sending you that automatic signal, I'm satisfied. I don't need to overeat. I don't need to binge. I feel absolutely calm and satisfied. I feel nourished, and I don't worry and think about food all the time at all. So we're switching that on as well. So just to combine, before we even move into the psychological, so into the habits, the routine, the pattern, comfort food, emotional purpose. Before we move into that, we are focusing on the physiological and the biological triggers, because they're the first step and they're the easiest to change, in fact. And then we can move into the psychological. Sometimes we need to focus on the psychological to be able to maintain and focus on that. But a lot of people, even if they just rewire their appetite, they actually notice these big results and changes. So I will add the link to the program. It's only $17. It's only $17. So it was real important for me to make it really accessible to everyone, so you've got this one specific tool and know how to change it. So what do we do with it? We are balancing blood sugar, making sure you're eating frequently enough, you have a carbohydrate appropriate diet, you know how to switch on the switch off system in your brain, you're taming your appetite, and you are reducing, almost eliminating those cravings for carbs and sugar. And it's only for $17. I'm gonna put the link below. You get immediate access to the program, and I'm here to support and help you. If you have any questions, let me know, and otherwise we will talk to you very soon again.